In this video, we're going to learn about Chinese weddings and some key phrases to wish the happy couple well on their big day. Before we learn about Chinese weddings and some key phrases, go check out Skritter.com. It's one of the most powerful tools to learn Chinese and Japanese characters. Before we go into the cultures and customs of Chinese weddings, let's learn 3 useful phrases that you can use at any wedding that you go to. First one, and my very own favorite, 百年好合. 100 years of harmony. Who wouldn't want that when they get married? So let's try that one more time together. 百年好合. The second one is, may you bathe in the river of love forever. 永浴爱河. So let's do that one more time. 永浴爱河. The final one, and I think quite a romantic one, is 白头偕老. May your hair grow white together. 白头偕老.
祝你们白头偕老. So I hope that they're like happy together until their hair gets white together.
Now, the reason we started this video with some key phrases is because when you go to a Chinese wedding, it's customary to give the happy couple a red envelope. Yes, instead of wedding presents, we give the happy couple cash. Now, you might be thinking, isn't it a bit direct giving someone cash instead of a nice present on their wedding? Well, in traditional Chinese cultures, weddings are kind of seen as a cooperative affair. So when someone in the village gets married, we all contribute towards the happy couple, the wedding expenses, and their life as newlyweds. So it's not really seen as crass, it's seen as something that's very practical to help the couple get started. And the idea is that when the next couple, when the Chens, the Wongs, the Lees get married, the money essentially circulates around the village and everyone gets to run a great wedding. Now, of course, looking at the modern context, giving red envelopes is a bit more politics to it in terms of how much you should give. But before we go into the amounts, let's learn how to write on a red envelope. Now, remember the 3 phrases that we talked about? You can write that on your red envelope. You start by writing the newlyweds' names up top. So you say 祝, which means wishing, XY, 百年好合, 100 years of harmony, and then you finish off with your name and it says respectful well wishes. So that's how you format a red envelope. Now let's talk about how much you put in it. The amount you put in red envelopes can vary drastically depending on which part of the country you're in, and more importantly, how well you know the couple. I find this a minefield to navigate, so I always ask someone that's close to me, someone that I would trust their advice. So if you're going to a Chinese wedding, definitely ask. And if you're uncomfortable with asking your friends, do you know who I always find gives you great advice? Taxi drivers. If I'm on the way to a wedding and I have no idea how much I put in my red envelope, I always ask the taxi driver. They always seem to get a good gauge of how expensive the venue is. They always ask you all the questions that you need to know to pack your red envelope. Now, there are actually blogs that highlight the rates of this year, so those are also good references. But the general rule is that you cover the cost of your own food at the wedding. Now, if you're overwhelmed by the blogs, the friends, and the taxi drivers, the general rule of thumb is you pay for your own meal. So depending on the venue, let's say a 5-star hotel or a normal restaurant, just guess how much a meal would cost at that establishment and pack your red envelope accordingly. Now, you've written your message, you've packed it with the right amount, you think, and you get to the venue. First, figure out whose guest you are. So if you've been invited by the bride, head over to the bride's side and submit your envelope. The reason I say submit is it's actually a fairly formal process. Usually the 2 families will sit on separate sides. They'll have tables, there'll be a notebook, there'll probably be 3 of their cousins taking the envelopes, opening them up in front of you, yes, taking out the cash and recording the amount. So when the extended family is opening up your red envelope in front of you, please don't feel like it's impersonal or an insult in any way. If anything, they're making sure that the amount you've given is correctly recorded so the red envelope doesn't get lost in the whole process and the happy couple will never know how much you gave them. And the other reason they record it is so that when they go to your wedding, they know how much to pack. And the tradition is usually to give you more than what you've given them.
Lannister always pays his debts.
Now there's a couple more things I'd like to share with you to really prepare you for your next Chinese wedding. First of all, it's the dress code. Unless it's specifically mentioned in the invitation, dress codes tend to be way more relaxed. If I were to go to a wedding, let's say in the UK, I would expect to put on maybe a nice cocktail dress, a nice summer dress, or even a more formal gown, depending on, again, the venue and location. However, I would say in Taiwan and China, the dress code can be very relaxed, sometimes so relaxed if you're going to a wedding in the countryside that people turn up in flip-flops. The next thing is that there's a fair amount of drinking. You might go, duh, there's drinking at every wedding. But I guess what I mean is the drinking custom. It's custom for the newlyweds to come with their parents to every single table and essentially do a shot. Now the smart couples, what they do is they find a drink that looks like whatever alcohol that they're drinking and they go around and they toast everyone. Now if you're my dad and didn't get the memo, you get very, very drunk at your own wedding. So if you want to do some proper drinking at a Chinese wedding, head towards the head table. That's usually where the most drinking happens. Another main difference that you'll find is the lack of dancing. So there's not really that kind of party vibe. However, many weddings these days will hire a professional host essentially. So there'll be kind of variety show style games. There'll be some singing. And yes, there usually is some KTV at some point. Now, if you're a friend of the bride, I would really suggest you going over and sneaking her some snacks or some food, because in a traditional Chinese wedding, the bride often changes up to 4 times minimum. She'll come in one dress, she'll probably change into a qipao, and then when she's sending off all the guests, she'll be in a completely different dress with a new hairdo and everything. So most of her time is spent changing, believe it or not. Now, of course, just like anywhere in the world, there's always something that's fashionable to do at weddings or something that's in vogue. But I think we've covered some of the main differences and some of the key things that you need to know when going to a Chinese wedding. Go check out Skritter.com and the blog for some additional phrases and more details on Chinese weddings. We'll end this video by saying, or by learning how to say, congratulations. 恭喜恭喜恭喜恭喜. You can say this a lot at a wedding. We'll see you next time. Bye.